Welcome to Our Love podcast, where we share insights from top scientists and relationship experts on all things about love that are out of the box, refreshing, and new. Now sit back, grab a cold drink or hot one if you prefer, and enjoy today's episode.
Hi, all. This is Dr. Keely Sykes-Rawlings, co-host of our.love podcast, where we visit with top experts in all things relationships. Today, I'll be talking with Dr. Ari Tuckman, a prolific writer, international presenter, and expert in the field of ADHD. I will also add that Ari is a licensed clinical psychologist, a certified sex therapist, and a prolific writer. His fourth book just came out, ADHD After Dark, Better Sex Life, Better Relationship. Today, we'll be discussing his research, his book, and the love skill of appreciation. What is appreciation, and how can you start practicing appreciation to help improve your relationship? So welcome, Ari.
It is awesome to be here. I am super psyched to be here with you.
I appreciate you being here.
Indeed, indeed.
Great to see you. I was actually thinking about when the last time we saw each other, and I think it was maybe a CHAD conference in the Bay Area?
It was. Yeah. So CHAD, the big ADHD organization. So yeah, that was the conference when we were there. And then we went and saw some stand-up, or some improv, which was super cool.
Yeah. So I'm ready to talk with you today, and we'll do a lot of yes and.
Indeed. Yes, and we will.
Yeah. Was it maybe 10 years ago?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Everything feels like 10 years ago, even what was yesterday. So yes, we'll go with 10 years.
Yeah. To place our listeners sort of in time and place, we're in our 22nd month of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, time moves a little bit differently, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And a lot has changed, I think, since I saw you last. I got myself some readers. So occasionally I'll be on and off with my, I call them my old lady glasses. I'm really glad you're here. I finished your book last week, and I love your writing. Reading your writing is like talking to you. It's done in such a conversational style, super informative, lots of information. And I like the way you develop your chapters. You can read them non-sequentially, which is really cool. But I also like that you pack a ton of research information in, but then follow it up at the end with bullet points of kind of the most important things on that topic, which I can imagine is a great read for anyone, but especially people who have ADHD. It allows them to maybe go to the end of the chapter and read the bullet points and then go back and read more about a certain topic. Anyway, I really enjoyed the book. I'm wondering what inspired the book. Why now?
Sure. Yeah. So, I've been working with ADHD for like 20 years, and a lot of it has been the standard stuff, right? Of how do you stay on top of the demands in your life, be more organized, be more on time, set priorities, all that. And that is all good stuff, worthy topics. But I really have become, like, over the last 5 or 10 years, kind of more and more interested in how ADHD impacts relationships, right? Mostly between kind of romantic partners, but really also like family relationships. And it really does have an effect. And, there are some folks out there doing some really good stuff in ADHD and relationships. Actually, that's not true. There's a very small number of people doing really good. There's not that many. There's not enough people, right? So, but there was really nobody who was looking at how does ADHD impact the couple's sex life, or even frankly, an individual's, sexuality. And yet this is such a big part of life, of relationships. It's a thing that connects us when it goes well and we feel good and we enjoy each other more. And it makes it easier to deal with like the annoying, mundane nonsense of life. And yet it is such a source of discontent and distance when it doesn't go well. And I felt like, as sort of a society, we weren't talking about this enough. I mean, all the couples were talking about it at home all the time, not effectively, but probably a lot. But as clinicians, like, we're missing this massive opportunity, right? Like, here's this really important thing. Here's this really powerful way to shift what happens in a couple's relationship. And we're not thinking about it. We're not talking about it. We're just leaving that lever unpulled, so to speak.
And you didn't look to anyone's research. You went out and did your own research. So I'm assuming there wasn't any research there.
Yeah, there was no research to look at. So as with many things, you're like, surely somebody has done research. You're like, oh no, turns out not. So like there was really no research out there on it. So I did my own. I put together a survey and I put it up on SurveyMonkey, and I went completely crazy and wrote way, way too many questions. But despite my terrible judgment, I got like at the time 3,000 folks to respond. I think it's probably like 4,000 or 5,000 at this point. But and I think that it speaks to a couple of things. I think one is the fact that people were really, really interested in this, and they wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to contribute. They wanted to learn something from it. And I set it up so that they would learn something from it. I think it also speaks to the fact that I have a bunch of great friends in the world of ADHD who like put the word out. They're like, hey, Ari's doing this survey. You should, click on it. So, so we got the word out and people responded. And I think it's awesome to have real research, like real data, not just me making stuff up at the office, which I'm happy to do, but like, it's nice to have real data to speak from.
Yeah. So for people who might be listening that don't know a lot about ADHD, can you just speak a little bit to what is ADHD? And then maybe also speak to if you think you might have ADHD or you think your partner might have ADHD, what's the next step?
Sure. So first of all, ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's sometimes called ADD, meaning attention deficit disorder without any of the H for hyperactivity. Technically, they're kind of the same thing. They're just subtypes of ADHD, whatever. But folks with ADHD tend to struggle with things like time management. They tend to run late. They tend to underestimate how long things take. They tend to get distracted and off task. Big procrastinators, trouble getting things done, misplace things, forgetful, get distracted during reading, during class lectures, during business meetings, during, talking to their partner, just sort of like all of that. Now, granted, none of us are perfect and we all have our moments, but folks with ADHD have a lot more of those moments. Typically, if you're a kid with ADHD, assuming you survive into adulthood, you become an adult who has ADHD. World is different in an adult than as a kid, but like the same struggles remain. There's a lot of genetics to ADHD. So if you are related to someone who has ADHD, you may want to consider like pause for a moment to reflect. A lot of adults these days are getting diagnosed through their kids in what I call the 2-for-1 diagnosis.
Kid goes in, gets diagnosed, and the parent reads the report and says, oh, that's kind of like me. Yep.
Hey, how about that? That sounds familiar. Yep. So, if you think that maybe there's some ADHD there, I think it's worth taking a look at. I mean, I'm kind of biased on it, but like, I think it is. And there's different ways to do it. I mean, there are people who do these big testing batteries. I have to admit, I'm not a fan of big testing batteries. If you want accommodations for your kid at school, federal law requires you do testing. But if you're an adult in the world who wants to make your life better, you don't need to drop $5,000 on a neuropsychological testing battery. Not helpful, not necessary. Really, what's helpful is a good interview. Let's talk about your life. How you do in your life these days? How do you do at home versus at work? What about the job before this? What about back in college or grad school if you went? What about high school, middle school, elementary? Talk about family history, right? So you're looking not just for the presence of ADHD, but also you're looking to make sure there isn't some other thing that better explains it. A lot of women tend to be, a lot of adults are not being diagnosed with ADHD, but women especially are being misdiagnosed with stuff like anxiety and depression, which indeed they have. But some of that anxiety and depression is the fact that they're struggling to stay up on everything in their life. So the ADHD is driving some of that anxiety and depression, and it sort of hides it. And a clinician who does not think about ADHD will see the anxiety and depression and stop there. So if you think there's some ADHD, you might have to kind of press a little bit. You might have to find a clinician who really understands it more than whoever you happen to be seeing, because still too many clinicians who treat adults don't know ADHD well.
Yeah. In that, this might be even just a simple yes or no question. I know you're not a medical doctor who would
Mhm.
prescribe medication, but what's your feeling about medication for ADHD? Yes, no,
Sure.
maybe,
I am
definitely
a
explore it.
I'm a big proponent of medication for ADHD. I'm not a big meds guy in general, but for ADHD, yes, I am. And the reason is ADHD makes your life harder in many, many ways when it's not well managed. Medication for ADHD is helpful in many, many ways. Like, it's not perfect, it's not magic. Sometimes you got to, mess around with different doses and try different ones and whatever. But generally speaking, they really work quite well. They are not addictive, like they really are not. And as much as one might have some concerns about what are the risks of taking a medication, especially perhaps in the long term, we also need to consider the other side of this, which is untreated ADHD has big, significant impacts, certainly in terms of relationship satisfaction for both partners, but also some, frankly, rather kind of scary research on things like estimated life expectancy,
Yeah.
right? How long do you live? Healthy years. And, partly that's because healthy habits are kind of boring and need to be done consistently, which is exactly what folks with ADHD struggle most on.
Yeah.
So it is not just about taking a pill so you can pay attention better in a work meeting or something. It's also about, I don't know, follow regular annual checkups with your regular doctor. It's about, eating a healthy diet and exercise and all the other stuff that we all should be doing a good job on in order to live long, healthy, happy lives. And frankly, to be good partners who our partner wants to keep around for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned some research around ADHD and relationship satisfaction. Can you speak
Mhm.
more about that?
Sure. So, one of the things we do know is that ADHD, again, especially when it's not well managed, it has a negative effect on the partner who has ADHD, right? Their ability to be the partner that they want to be, right? I want to be consistent. I want to be predictable. If you ask me to do stuff, I want to be able to do it. But it also affects the non ADHD partner in the sense of like, I don't want to be a control freak. I don't want to be on your case all the time. Why do I always have to be the one who does everything? Right. So, like, that sort of balance, that workload balance between partners, right? Like, that's a universal. Every couple has to figure that stuff out. But when ADHD isn't well managed, it makes it really that much harder, especially when it's the guy who has ADHD. Like, typically, not always, but typically, then the woman steps up more, does more of the share, which makes sense why she would. But then she's burned out and resentful, and people don't want to have sex with people when they're burned out and resentful. At least not the person they're resentful. They might want to have sex with other people, but not with the person they're resentful towards, right? Um, so it absolutely then affects how the two people get along with each other. Also, by the way, if your partner has been sniping and griping at you all day, again, you might be interested in sex, but not with them, right?
Yeah.
So like, that is a common, unhappy place that these couples wind up, especially when ADHD hasn't been identified, when it's not being well managed, when they're not working well together as a team.
So, I have so many different ways I want to go, and it's so hard. Let me just take a slight turn towards the love scale of appreciation. When I
Yes.
think about the things that you described that go on in a couple with ADHD, maybe low motivation, poor time management, impulsivity, lack of focus, to me, it seems like a lot of things would interfere with the ability to appreciate.
Yes.
Let's actually start. Can we maybe start with? Do you have a working definition of appreciation? And if you don't, I've got what love.com has to say about it.
Let me make something up and then then grade my test. Tell me if I
Okay.
got anything
Okay.
right.
Okay.
So, I think when it comes to appreciation, like, first thing to think about is appreciation is a thing we feel within ourselves, right? Like, I am appreciative of the fact that you invited me on this podcast. Right. So
And
I
I am
appreciate.
appreciative. I am appreciative that you are here. Thank you again.
Awesome. So, right. So first, it's a thing we feel within ourselves about something that the other person is doing. Um, then hopefully we're expressing, we're sharing, we're acknowledging, we're making known that appreciation. And I think the impact for couples where one person has ADHD is that the partner who has ADHD might be appreciative of like, I appreciate all those things you were doing for me, or I appreciate all those ways that you're awesome in our relationship, but I may forget to say it. Or alternatively, they might be sort of distracted and kind of caught up in other things and not realize like all those amazing things. So like I was talking to a couple today where I was asking the guy, like, do you misplace things? And he said, no, I mean, sometimes I misplace my wallet. And his wife is like, I'm putting his wallet and keys in the right place all the time, right? He didn't know that she was doing something worth being appreciative of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that then it can set up a situation where then the non-ADHD partner feels like, I work so hard to do all these things, you don't even appreciate it. Why am I bothering? Or appreciation is sort of, let's just say, undone by bad behavior, right? So she's, again, sniping and griping at him. He's not going to be appreciative of the things that she does do because it's sort of, it doesn't take a whole lot of bad behavior to undo a bunch of good behavior. So yeah, I think that, I don't know, I sort of wandered away from the question. How did I do in terms of appreciation?
You're good. I'm going to give you a solid A. And it's interesting because you brought up the two things that really stand out to me about appreciation that are very simplistic, but I think so powerful are see and say. Right. So you have to see it.
Yep.
Right. And that's where maybe the attention gets you into trouble for any of us, ADHD or not ADHD. And then you have to say it, which again, I could see where some attentional stuff or focus stuff could interfere. Yeah. So see and say. Can we talk a little bit about reaction sensitivity dysphoria? Yeah. Can you define that for us? And then let's just start there. Can you define that for us?
Actually, let me go back, but I promise you I'll remember RSD. So in terms of the seeing and the saying, so one of the things I asked in the survey was rate how much effort you put in on managing your or your partner's ADHD, rate how much effort your partner is putting in. Now, of course, everybody will not be surprised to hear everybody rated themselves as putting in more effort and their partner putting in less effort, which mathematically does not actually add up, right? Like that math does not work. So part of it is it's the seeing, right? Like I see every single thing I do because I was there when it happened. There's a lot of stuff my wife does I never see, right?
Yeah. Well, like the wife you were just describing who puts the keys in the wallet in the place. He didn't know she was doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. So she can't get credit for what he doesn't even know about. Now, it's not about like scoring points, but like we do pay attention to fairness. Like we do. If I feel like I'm working harder than you are, I'm going to be a little bit pissy about it. So part of this is having some of these conversations or really making an effort to like look for what our partner is doing, including noticing the absence of things. So you may not notice the kitchen's clean, but you would notice the kitchen is a mess, right? So realizing like, oh, there were things that happened here. People ate things on plates and, cups and stuff, but they're all gone, right? So like sometimes we see the presence more than the absence of something. So I think the seeing is not simply in a passive way, I happen to notice, but rather I will actively look for.
Looking. Yeah. Great point. Can I interject a quick fun story about that? So I've been married for over 25 years. And somewhere along the line, we got into some routine about one of us would do a big cleanup in the kitchen, but the other person wouldn't notice. So in order to help the other person notice, we still do this. This has been 20 some years of this. We will sort of, the other person comes home from work, we'll whip our hand around and say, look around, right? And the other person sort of comes to and says, oh, you cleaned the kitchen. Thank you. Which is also an interesting piece about appreciation in that if the other person doesn't see or look, you could point out, which I would love to get back to. Can we backtrack on the?
But I think what's good about this look around thing that you guys do is you do it in a funny, joking way, right? You could be pissy and resentful. Like again, remember, see this? You know what I did all day? right? No appreciation. Sadly, like you did all the work and you got none of the appreciation because now what your husband is thinking is, ugh, you're such a pain,
Yeah.
right? As
Yeah.
opposed to making it a joking thing, right?
Yeah.
Now you're connecting together and you actually get the benefit of the appreciation.
Yeah. 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 We always end up giggling about it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Can we go back to the RSD?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it might also have something to do with appreciating and being appreciated.
Yeah. So RSD stands for rejection sensitive dysphoria. And dysphoria is basically a fancy word for kind of a bad feeling. So RSD is it's a bit of a new idea in the world of ADHD, but it describes this experience that folks with ADHD tend to have a bit more often, which is in the face of rejection or criticism or some sort of, event that happens that kind of puts them in a bad light or they feel like someone has a bad feeling towards them, this strong negative emotional response comes really quick, pretty intense, might kind of pass quickly, perhaps a bit not, but yeah, I mean, it's this sort of, and it's a little bit neurological in the sense of you can almost think of it as a bit of emotional impulsivity. It's just that this kind of strong negative feeling kind of like takes over how that person feels. So it is a part of ADHD for some people, perhaps more than others, but I think the appreciation part of it is, I mean, this is kind of easy to say, but kind of fostering appreciation within the relationship, right? Recognizing each other's good qualities, verbalizing them, showing them, doing something in relation to it. And hopefully that sets a bit of a better foundation as opposed to if there's a little bit of that kind of like slow burning tension, it's just really easy to go to a more negative place, whether it's an RSD moment or, you know, what any of us might experience.
Do you think it's possible, or maybe you know some research out there that I'm unaware of, but do you think it's possible that people with ADHD might need more appreciation because of the RSD? Like they might need,
Sure.
maybe, yeah, maybe it's the RSD. Maybe it's also, I mean, let's think about it. If you have ADHD and it's been undiagnosed and untreated, you've probably lived a long life of your
Yes.
parents on your case because you haven't cleaned up your room, your teachers on your case because you're not living up to your potential, your wife on your case because you keep leaving the dirty laundry, on the floor. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder, do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, again, especially if it hasn't been diagnosed, it hasn't been well managed. Kids with ADHD, adults with ADHD get a lot more negative feedback
Yeah,
from parents and teachers, or in the case of adults, from friends, from bosses, from romantic partners, because if you're not doing the thing that other people are expecting of you in that moment, people tend to have thoughts about it. And, it's one thing if it's simply, I'm disappointed that you didn't do that thing, um, as opposed to what is wrong with you that you didn't do that, right? Because the first
yeah,
one is a situation of the moment, as
yeah.
opposed to there's something wrong with you, is really a much more enduring, this is who I am. And, folks with ADHD, a little, is this, I don't know, this may not be true, but I'll say it, like, especially maybe a bit more so women with ADHD who feel a bit more kind of social pressure to kind of, be considerate and be a good friend and be a good student and whatever compared to boys. Like it's easy to internalize that and to sort of read in that I'm the person who doesn't do what people hope. Therefore, I have to work harder to earn just the standard appreciation that other people get.
And I could imagine in a couples therapy session, you have one individual with ADHD who has
Yeah,
maybe had a whole life of all of this negative input, and being able to talk with the couple, right? To talk with the other partner in particular about what that must have been like or
yeah,
continues to be like for that ADHD partner in order to sort of flip the framework from he's not doing that, and then he did this, and he always does X, Y, and Z
sure.
to, oh, maybe appreciating and noticing some of the times that he does hang up the towel, or the times that
Yeah,
he does get it right, or the time he did plan a great date night or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and the appreciation part of that is to sort of recognize that if your partner has ADHD and they're doing something, maybe it's not as good as you would have done it or in the way that you would have done it. But maybe that took a lot of effort for
Yeah.
them. Um, so, or I'm going to steal a line from a friend of mine, Jessica McCabe, where she was talking about like keeping her apartment neat or not. And she was like, this is me trying, right? Like it's not as good as her roommate does it, but for her, this is pretty damn good, right? So I think and that's just like a basic universal relationship idea of don't judge your partner's efforts based on what it's like for you, because the stuff we're good at, easy, of course, you should just do that, duh, right? But for a partner, it may not be so easy. So even if the outcome isn't as good as you would have hoped for, what was the intention? What was the effort that was put in? And I think that's often a thing that gets missed. And that is definitely a place, as you said, to see, to look,
Yeah.
and to acknowledge and say something.
When you mentioned the word effort, it made me think of this quote in your book, and you say it a couple of times. You say, effort is an aphrodisiac.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about that? I thought that was so interesting.
I think effort counts for a lot. Like, okay, fine, there's lots of places where, outcome matters, but especially when it comes to relationship, effort matters a lot, right? Like if I feel like you tried hard, I'm going to be much more appreciative and much more forgiving. On the other hand, if I feel like you sort of half-assed it, like you didn't really care and that's why it didn't work out well, I'm going to be a bit doubly disappointed. And the challenge, though, is for all of us, right? We look to actions to infer intention. I look at what you do, I run it through my filter, and then I assume what your intent was. And I sometimes say ADHD is a disorder of converting intentions into actions. So folks with ADHD tend to have negative assumptions made about their intentions and frankly their character. You know, you just don't care about people. That's why you always run late,
Mm.
as opposed to you are really bad at tracking time. You easily get distracted. You misjudge how long things take. That's why you're late, right? Like you're going to have a very different feeling about that person being late if you have one interpretation over the other.
Yeah. What's the book? Lazy, Stupid.
Yeah. You mean I'm not lazy, stupid, or crazy? Yeah. One of the
Yeah.
old books on ADHD. Nailed it. Exactly.
Yep. 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 I went and did a tiny bit of research with about 10 friends and colleagues, not the kind of research you did not run this through any analytics. I'm going to pull this up on my phone. This was the number one question asked by um, women in, again, 10 women in heterosexual couples. I bet you could probably anticipate what the question is. Almost all of them actually said, oh, ask this question. Quote, how can I get my spouse to show appreciation for me without having to remind him to do this again and again and again?
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So first of all, as much as it's annoying to have to ask for it, if you go poke and then he gives you some, that's good. Like let's give partial, like
Right.
you don't get an
That's
A
a look
plus.
around. Look what
Yeah.
I did in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if they respond well, give them some credit for it. Right. So maybe they suck at noticing, but they're good at showing appreciation.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my first thought. But I guess, the other thought that I would have is to kind of talk to the guy about like, look, this is important to me. It means something to me, not just that you show the appreciation, but that you take the initiative on it, that I don't need to like extract it out of you.
Yeah.
And it's part of what makes me feel like I'm important to you and the relationship is important to you. And it's not that everything else is. And oh, yeah, by the way, thanks, honey, looks good.
Right. Right. I don't know if you use this. I would assume that you do. I often use with ADHD couples and non-ADHD couples, reminders on the phone as an external memory hard drive.
Yeah.
So a reminder that pops up every morning that says, look around the kitchen, or a reminder that might pop up at night that says, Look for one thing that you can show appreciation for. Any other tools that you might use in the sort of helping a couple really hone in on that look and say, or see and say?
I mean, I think that yeah, having some sort of external, right? Like that, which is just a basic idea in managing ADHD, but frankly, it's just a good idea for all of us, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't hold it all in your head. Do not rely on, oh, I can't remember it or I forgot it. Yeah, set up reminders. However it is that you do it, create some sort of external reminder. Um, and like so that's the first half is the being aware of it. Because if we're not aware, then nothing happens. Then the second half is actually do it, by which I mean, no, seriously, like actually do it, right? When you see the reminder, don't say, oh, I'll
I'll
do
do
that in
that
a sec.
later.
Right. Yeah, which means I'll never do it. So, some of that it is that kind of biting the bullet. And this is really easy to say. But there is kind of that idea of like, am I committed to this? Is this actually important to me? Is this a priority? Do I want to make this happen? And that might be a thing that you have to think about, frankly. Like, is this really a thing that's important to me? Does this fit for me? Do I feel okay about it? Are there other bigger issues that need to be addressed within the relationship? Are there things that you just need to sort of accept about your partner or your situation? Right. So, like, it's not, I don't know, it's not just a Cosmo top 10 list, but it's certainly a thing to think about. And if you're struggling with it, then that is a good thing to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. How would this topic of appreciation I'm thinking about, I don't know if you've ever played this game at at the Chinese food restaurant where you open the fortune cookie and you read the fortune cookie and then afterwards you say in bed.
Sure.
Is
Yeah.
it, oh good, this is a game that other people play. This is not
Only
just
you
my
do this.
family.
Why are you so perverted?
So I'm thinking about that, right? Da, 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 in bed.
Yeah.
What about appreciation in bed? What's your thought about that? Whether or not, yeah, ADHD related or not? Because I think so much
Sure.
of what, if we zoom out, so much of what you're talking about is clearly ADHD related, but it's helpful for any couple
Oh,
to
yeah.
listen to. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Take ADHD out and it's all the same.
Yeah.
So it's just ADHD is just
More.
more so, more of the same. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely when it comes to sexual stuff. So, early in a relationship, sex is easy, probably because, every time we get together, we both want it and it's good, right? You don't have to work hard. You don't have to do anything. It just shows up. Um, Once you've been together a while and life gets hard and boring and complicated and stressful and just whatever, right? Like it takes a bit more effort sometimes. And a very common thing is that both people are not equally interested in fooling around at that point. That doesn't mean anything is broken. It doesn't mean there's a problem. It just means you don't do the same thing at the same time. Um, but this is where appreciation comes in. So, if your partner is appreciative of things that have happened before that moment, they're a lot more likely to be generous and say, yeah, I'll take one for the team. Let's see what we can do here. And if you've been kind of a jerk or whatever, right? Like, no thanks, tired, right? So, but it also goes the other way, which is, your partner being generous in bed. If you have any brains at all, right, means that you're a whole lot better behaved the next day, right? And you will act in generous team player kind of ways. And that this is really important that, and this was one of the things that came out in my survey, not surprisingly, is the couples who were really happy with each other. One of the things that they endorse is they're much more likely to be sexually generous when they themselves were not in the mood.
Mm.
And
Mm.
okay, fine, that's about sex, but it's really about lots of other things in relationships too. That ability to kind of see beyond your own situation, the ability to be generous and giving in some sort of a way, whatever it is, when that's the thing that your partner wants, and it's freely given, right? It's not this thing of like, ugh, I have to have sex, or my partner is going to be pissy tomorrow, because that's not freely given and not fun. And frankly, if you're the person getting that sex, like I can't believe you're really loving it either. So, but rather it's like, I am making this choice, like of my own free will. I see this is a good thing. I'm happy to do it. I'm willing to do it. Here we go.
Yeah. Again, back to that effort, right? Effort and
Yes.
appreciation. Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to play a quick game with me. Do I have to tell
Sure.
you what it is first?
No. Let's
Okay,
keep it
good.
surprising and interesting.
Okay. So I want to see, and I think this will be pretty easy. I want to see if we can go back and forth,
Hmm.
and I'll try to keep a tally. I got to put on my glasses. I want to see if we can go back and forth and come up with 10 ways that we might show our partner appreciation.
Ooh.
And I'm going to start with you want to start?
No, you start us off, set the frame.
Okay. I'm going to do a super easy one. And I think actually that this is the one that everyone thinks of and then they stop. They don't see 9, 10, 20 other ones, right?
Sure.
This one's super easy. Saying thank you.
Ooh, that is a good one. Grandma would be so proud of you.
I know, wouldn't she?
Yeah. See, I was thinking like back rub or something.
Oh, okay. There you go. 2. Excellent.
Yeah.
Apologizing. I think saying I'm sorry and taking accountability and responsibility is a way to show appreciation. I appreciate your feelings and I am sorry, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It takes some guts to own it. So, yeah. How about, I don't know, bring your partner a cup of coffee or a drink or a glass of water or some other nice deed.
Yep. Gifts. That love
Yeah.
language of gift giving. Yep. Good one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know if you're going to let me. I don't know if you're going to let me count this one because it's a little bit like saying thank you, but writing a note
Yeah.
of appreciation. It's a little bit different, right? And
Yeah, that's different.
It might not even say thank you. It might just be, I love you so much. I miss you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, or I'm grateful for. You're gonna let me get away with that one?
No, that's a different thing because the saying is cool and the doing something is cool. Like they're cool in different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, we're halfway there.
All right. We're just sending a nice text, right? Which could be just thinking of you. It could be, hope your day is going good, or how was that crappy meeting you had, or can't wait to rip your clothes off, or, right? I don't know. Lots of stuff.
Yeah. I think it's your turn. Although you said so many things right there, I think maybe you got us up to like maybe 8, but.
Now those are just variations on the same idea. Sending a nice text, right? A text in the middle of the day. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, isn't it your turn?
Oh, okay. I said writing a note, you said sending a text.
Yeah.
I'll take on the next one. All right. Gotcha. Well, you said this one in the texting example, but I'm going to pull it out. And that would be taking an interest in the other person's life. Yes. So asking them about their work, asking them about the doctor's appointment they had that day, but just like taking a really concerted interest in what's going on.
Yeah. So in other words, it's a specific, it's not just, how was your day?
Yes.
How was your day? Person I've never met and don't know anything about. I just sat next to you at a bus station. How was your day, madam? Right. But I remembered a thing that you told me and I'm now doing something with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So
I'll back to you.
I don't know. I guess kind of letting your partner pick the TV show you watch, the movie, what music goes on the speaker, something like that. Like, yeah, you can do this one.
Yeah. Sort of reciprocity, or there's something in there about selflessness or caring for the other person. And again, there's an attention piece to that, right? Attending to, oh, you like this movie, or I picked the last 3 movies. I'm going to give you a chance. Yeah. Okay, we're at 8. Is that right? Yep, 8. So I'm 9. How about listening attentively? Yeah, that one works. Yeah, listening attentively to the other person, which I think we have done. The invention of cell phones and all of the technology we have, I think, is so helpful, but it can also really get in the way.
Sure.
So, putting your phone away and just really listening attentively. All right, Volley, back to you. You get the last word on this one.
Ooh, all right. How about ripping your partner's clothes off in a respectful and consensual way, obviously?
I love it. And that's such a great place to end. That is wonderful.
Yeah, because if you do the other 9 things, the last thing is way more likely to happen.
That's right. That's right. Everybody's putting in effort and appreciating, and then the lights go out.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I really, really appreciate you being with us today. It's been really wonderful. Anything you'd like to say? You want to sort of let folks know where they might be able to find you online?
Sure. So best place to find me is my books and podcast website, which is adultadhdbook.com. I've got a bunch of stuff on there, including recordings of old presentations that I've done on ADHD in general, ADHD in relationships, sexuality, all that stuff. So I'm easy to find online. So check it out. Definitely don't reinvent the wheel.
Awesome. Great to have you. Take good care.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Our Love podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's topic. Please be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and give us a 5-star rating to help others find us. We'll see you again next week, and we hope that you are experiencing your best love today.